My husband is a hunter. And the reason I bring that up is because every once in a while, we like to hunt for things, right? We like to hunt for deals. We like to hunt for discounts. We like to hunt for things and then say, hooray, I achieved my prize. Well, it turns out that my husband is a hunter. And as long as I don't approve of a purchase, he keeps hunting. And as soon as I approve of a purchase, he stops hunting for that item. He buys it and then he goes on to the next hunt, right? So we end up with a lot of stuff in our homes that maybe we don't use. That's the topic of today's show, things that we purchased but do not use. Now, I do want to bring to your attention that up until now, during this 12-part series that we've been doing here on Hoarding World, we've been having conversations about our relationship with stuff. And it is to learn to ask better questions of ourselves. But today we're going to pivot just a little bit. We're not just going to ask questions, but today we're going to find solutions. I know, super exciting, right? I'm glad you guys have joined me. This is super fun for me. And I want to show you that today, while we're here, this is just a YouTube channel. Okay. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am not qualified in any shred of the imagination to give you medical advice. This is for entertainment purposes only and educational purposes. As a professional house cleaner of 30 years, I've been inside all kinds of people's homes. We've worked with all different levels of people, from different hoarding situations, people that have super duper clutter, people that are immaculate homes, but they got like a super scary room, all different ranges of people in between. So what I'm here today to share with you is my own personal experience and some of the things that I've learned over being really observant over the last 30 years in helping people come to their own conclusions. So today we're going to share with you some of those strategies in hopes that as you move forward, you go, oh, wait a second. Oh, yes, I bought some things just like that I didn't use. And here are the new questions I'm going to ask of myself. Okay. So that's our focus for today. I do want to remind you that we're on a 12-part journey here at Hoarding World, and this is a short series. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe so that you don't miss out on what we're talking about. And we are 3 episodes in already. And so we've got a few more coming up, but I don't want you to miss them. So subscribe if you have not already. All right, on to today's show. Do you guys know Punching Bob? This is Punching Bob, and he is a piece of gym equipment, and it is used for boxers. We train boxers how to use Punching Bob so that you can, I don't know, whenever you get frustrated or you feel like you would like to punch somebody, instead of punching a human, you punch Bob. Punching Bob. Okay, so I said already my husband was a hunter, and I remember the day he came home and discovered that out of the blue, he needed to have a Punching Bob. I was like, why do you need a Punching Bob, right? You don't punch things now anyway. Why Punching Bob? He's like, oh, because I work out every day and I'm just going to shake up my workouts and I'm going to do something different. I need a Punching Bob. I was like, okay. So we started looking online and we started going to places like Dick's Sporting Goods, and we were looking around to find a Punching Bob. And it's not just Punching Bob, it's then punching gloves. You need, boxing gloves. And then are you just going to get a Punching Bob, or are you also going to get one of those great big bags that hangs from the ceiling? They have these freestanding units that have a great big frame to them. And then there's a big bag that comes down and you can punch and the bag moves a little bit, but it's really, really heavy. So was it going to be a hanging bag, or was it going to be a freestanding bag, or was it going to be a Punching Bob? And you can see by my picture, Punching Bob won. But what happened from the purchase was we purchased it because he was going to shake up his workouts. Okay. That was what he told me. He sold me on the idea of a Punching Bob because he was going to shake up his existing workouts. I didn't know enough about the decluttering process at the time to ask a different series of questions. Because if you look at it real big, the sudden impulse to shake up workouts, that seemed like a really valid reason to buy Punching Bob, right? That seemed like a valid reason. But what workout are you going to give up in order to pick up Punching Bob? Right? That's where it gets interesting. I want to stop for a second and say hi, AJ. Good to see you here. Hi, Diane and Melanie. It's good to see you guys. I'm super glad that you've joined me here today. This is so fun that we get to spend this kind of time together. And I do want you to leave your questions and comments. I'm going to save some time at the end so that we can answer those questions. But what I want us to start asking in our head as we go out to buy something like a punching bob or a new pair of gym shoes or a Pilates mat or an elliptical machine or a treadmill or something that is like, oh, it's the new year, I'm going to get in shape. I want us to ask the question, what workout are you doing right now that you're going to replace with that piece of equipment? And that's a really important question, because if you haven't figured out what you're going to plug into its space, it's probably never going to get used. And this is the big reason why the weight equipment is a revolving industry. And you see lots of it on apps like Nextdoor and Buy Nothing Marketplace, and people are trying to sell it on Facebook and all these different neighborhood apps, is because they bought a piece of equipment, but they never figured out how they were going to integrate it into their life. I know that sounds really like obvious, right? It's not obvious. So when we bought Punching Bob, we did not say, hey, we're going to give up our bicycles and we're going to take up boxing. We ended up buying a bunch of boxing mitts. We bought some like little hand pads, like I could hold up a hand pad and he could punch the pad and I could use resistance. He got me a set of punching mitts, and I don't punch Bob either. If I was going to punch him, I just like punch him like, not with gloves. But we bought all this equipment, and now Punching Bob sits inside my weight room, and he just sits there lonely every day, and nobody ever punches him. Nobody ever comes in to use Punching Bob. So my question is, what workout are you going to replace that with in order for you to justify the price? And this is not so much about money as it is about having a bunch of weird things in your house that then take up space. And then like, we have to ask the question, if something were ever to happen to me, what happens to Punching Bob? Is somebody just going to give it away? Is my husband going to hang on to it forever? Is he one day going to use it? Is he not going to use it? Like, why do we still have it? And so we can start getting rid of some of the stuff that we're not using. But before we get rid of them, let's make a rule about Punching Bob. Or in this scenario or this case, it could be a treadmill or an elliptical machine or a mini trampoline or whatever the piece of equipment is. Okay. If you don't make a rule about it, it's going to get really easy to go out and buy something different. Oh, well, I didn't use Punching Bob, but I will use an elliptical machine, right? I'm going to use that while I'm watching TV. Well, what are you doing right now while you're watching TV that you're going to give up in order to replace that with the elliptical machine, right? Because if you're not willing to give anything up, nothing's going to change and you're not going to use it. That's the question. So I want us to start asking the deeper questions so that we come up with the better answers. All right. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Moving on then. Previous interests. Now, this is inside the same room the Punching Bob lives in. And what we're looking at over in the far corner back against the wall is we're looking at an exercise bike that you ride during the wintertime. And you're looking at a couple of trek bikes that are off-road bikes that happen during the summertime, if you will, that can be ridden on the road or on trails. And so there are a couple of bikes here, and I used to be a triathlete. And so cycling is very near and dear to my heart. It's something that I use. It's something that I've done for a long time. And so having a bicycle or bicycles makes a lot of sense for me, right? Not so much my husband, because he was never a cyclist. And when we bought bikes, again, he went on the hunt. Oh, I'm going to get me a bike. I'm going to shake up my workouts and I'm going to get me a bike. And he went to, and he's one of these guys where he finds what he wants, but in the hunt, what happens is we find better models. We find people telling better stories, and there were better athletes that were in better shape and they had a better bike. So this is a Trek road bike, and it was probably $300 maybe, but he found like a $3,000 bike that was a racing bike. Now, my husband, if you met him, he was large at the time. He's still a large man to this day. He does not look like a cyclist, and he's not a racer. But he tried to sell me on the fact that, oh, I need one of these high-speed racing bikes because as I switch up my workout, I'm going to need the best equipment to get the best results. All right, well, let's take baby steps and let's think about this. Was this a previous interest of yours? And the answer was no. This is a brand new interest, a brand new hobby. Okay, so before we go out and we just buy the best, either because we can afford it or we're enamored by it or we're caught up in the moment of an advertisement or a strong testimonial, did you have previous interest in the topic? And I have to ask the question, because if the answer is no, what makes you go from no interest at all to suddenly you have to have something? And so the question for this, and this is a strategy that I use a lot, and I want to encourage you to use it as well. If you did not need this item 5 minutes ago, and now you can't live another 5 minutes without it, you're probably caught up in what we call impulse buying. Impulse buying is where you suddenly get enamored by an infomercial or something at the end of an aisle as you're walking through the grocery store, or you're on a website and it says people who bought this also bought this. And you're like, oh, well, I got to be like those other people. If they bought this, they must know something I don't know, right? I didn't need that 5 minutes ago. And I can't live another 5 minutes without it, right? I must have this right now. So what I did was I made a deal with my husband, because now I'm starting to get a little bit smarter as I go. I said, it's okay if you want a high-end racing bike. I totally support your endeavor in a high-end racing bike, and I will buy that for you. But you must put 7,000 miles on the road racing bike first. I'm going to buy you the less expensive bike. I'm going to give it to you, and you can ride every day if you want. When you reach 7,000 miles, I will buy you the bigger, nicer, faster bike. Now, the reason that you're looking at this picture here with the the bikes in here that are just the where's my picture? Trying to make this big here. There we go. The reason that you're looking at this with the two road bikes is because he never went the 7,000 miles. We never made it that far. And because we never made it that far, he never got the better bike. And what we settled for were a couple of ride around town bikes that are still good. They still work really nicely, but not as much of an investment. And here you see it's sitting inside the house during the wintertime, right? So I want to ask the next question. How many days a week will you ride? If I'm going to buy you a new bike, how many days a week will you ride? And you have to start looking at your current schedule. And you're like, well, I don't have time on Monday. I got this on Monday. I got this on Tuesday. I take the kids here somewhere on Wednesday. I got work meeting late on Thursday. All of a sudden, there is no day of your week you can ride a bike, right? Unless you get up really early in the morning. What will have to change for you to do that? And I want you to go a step further. At what temperature are you going to take the bikes outside? If it's 30 degrees, are you going to be riding the bikes outside, or will you be riding the indoor bike? Because if you decide you're going to ride the bike 6 days a week and it's below 50 degrees, that means indoor bike, above 50 degrees, outdoor bike, right? So now you have a rule about when you're taking it outside and how many days a week. Now there's no excuse that you're never going to use it, because now you have a rule about that thing. But it goes back to the earlier question about punching Bob. If I'm going to buy a bike, what is that going to replace that I'm currently doing? Are we giving up punching Bob so that we can then ride bikes? Because we only have so much time in a day, right? We buy these things without realizing that they take up time and commitment on our part. And so 5, 6, 10 years later, we still have punching Bob and we have bikes. And then we wonder, when are we ever going to get around? Because that magical day never came, right? We didn't put it in our schedule before we bought the equipment. And that's one of the reasons why we have some of the stuff we have, but never use. I want to jump over here for a second. Diane says, a cry cut machine. Finally, I decided it was quicker to buy pre-cut letters and just hand print the labels in the scrapbooks. So she gave it to another scrapbooker. I love that. I have my little yellow happy bell here. That gets a little ding for giving it away to a friend. That's awesome. And Diane also said, an ice cream maker. Used once and had wonderful ice cream, but apparently not worth the trouble. Kept it for many years and then finally decided she would never use it again. You know what? Happy bell again. Go, Diane, right? To come to the realization that, oh, hey, I thought I was going to use it. It made sense then. And then you realize it didn't actually make sense at all. It doesn't fit into our lifestyle. Here you are stuck with something you're not going to use, and give yourself permission to move on. That's the way we have to do it. Otherwise, our houses get very cluttered. Along the same lines as Diane's ice cream machine, I found that I had a fond memory that goes way back to my youth of hot homemade bread. This comes from my sister. As I was growing up, my oldest sister would get up every morning at 4 a.m. and we had our own wheat grinder. Who has a wheat grinder, right? We had a wheat grinder. We grew our own wheat. She ground the wheat the night before. The next morning, she would get up and she would make hot homemade bread. And you would wake up in the morning and the whole house smelled like hot homemade bread. Like, oh, that is so delicious. Whole wheat bread. And you would go downstairs, fresh raw butter that we ourselves made with honey that we grew, that we didn't grow, with our own beehives. So it was hot homemade bread, freshly ground, fresh butter, fresh honey. And I mean, to die for. I could just sink my teeth into these big, thick, juicy slices of bread. And so later on in my adult years, I keep thinking back to that moment. So buying something because of a fond memory I once had goes back to, oh yes, I can recreate those memories, right? This is a reason why people buy things they never use. It reminds them of a happier time. It takes them back to, oh yeah, my mother did this. My grandmother did this. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could be that person in my husband's life that my sister was for me, making hot homemade bread? Oh, that's so delicious. But if I were to look at my lifestyle and say, right now I'm having a really hard time finding time to water 2 live plants, I am not going to be kneading bread and, putting it in a bread maker and then turning on the timer and waiting to be at home when the bread cooks and then taking it out before it burns and all that stuff. I don't have that kind of bandwidth. And so for me, that's not a good purchase because my lifestyle is not conducive to that, right? And so even though it brought me fond memories, the question becomes, on which day of the week will you make bread? When are you going to actually make this magical bread that makes your heart sing? And the answer is never. At what point of the day are you going to make that bread? Because if I say, well, I'll make the bread on Thursdays, I have time every Thursday to make that bread. Oh, really? When on Thursday will you make the bread? It's got to be right after pack meeting or right after piano practice or whatever it is. If it doesn't fit into your schedule, and it's not on your calendar and you haven't allocated time for making bread, it ain't going to happen. On most people's clocks, it's not going to happen, right? So I want us to start asking different questions. Did I like the idea of the homemade bread because my sister made me homemade bread when I was a kid? And if that's the case, what I need to do is take the time and the money I would have spent on the bread maker, take my sister out for lunch and say, thanks very much for the happy memories. And that'd be the end of that. Because my family doesn't eat bread, number one, and number two, I don't have time to make it. If I buy a bread maker, it's not going to get used. What is in your kitchen right now that you are hanging on to that you don't use because something happened and it never became a good time, right? All right, moving on. Keeping up with the Joneses. I love this one. Many people buy things because they're hoping that because their neighbors play and they can hear the neighbors playing, they're like, oh, I should get a musical instrument like that. And I should teach myself how to play. So we buy things, and some of them are kind of expensive. We buy things like a keyboard, and this is an 88 keyboard. Okay. This isn't one of the little ones. This is a great big 88 key keyboard with weighted keys that are just like a piano. So while you're sitting here inside what is a home music room, you can sit there and you can play as if you were really playing on a regular keyboard. So I love that, right? I love the theory of it. Now, in our home, and I recommend that you do this in your home, even if you're only one person, there needs to be a financial limit at which point you do not buy things unless you have another conversation. And in my home, we started out and the conversation was $400. If you're going to buy anything over $400, both parties, the husband and wife, need to sit down and have a conversation about it to make sure that we're both playing on the same page. And now as my business has expanded, I buy lots of stuff in my business that's way more expensive than that, but it's because it's for my business, not for my personal life. Okay. So the rules of this will change, but there needs to be kind of a cap where you're kind of like, whoa, I'm back to that impulse buying thing again. I just saw a Korg Triton keyboard, 88 weighted keys online. I got to have that. Didn't need it 5 minutes ago, but I can't live another 5 minutes without it. I got to get me one of those. And this goes back to, when are you going to play? Do you play now? Is this a previous interest? You see how these are all sort of stacking on top of each other, and they're different conversations we're having with ourselves. Because if we start having different conversations with ourselves, we're going to get different answers. And that's exactly what I'm trying to enforce today when we have this conversation. Because if we keep doing the same things we've always done, we're going to keep getting the same results we've always gotten. So if we're going to do things radically different, we have to ask radically different questions. Does that make sense? Okay. So going back to the keeping up with the Joneses, who are the Joneses? Who are the Joneses? Yeah, we hear the neighbors playing, but what does that have to do with our lives? Right? Because they have a piano, we got to have a piano. That doesn't even make any sense. When are we going to find time to play? And so then the next question becomes, do you play now? If you do not play now, when will you take lessons? Are you really going to stop and pay for piano lessons so that you can learn how to play because the neighbors are taking piano lessons and they know how to play? That doesn't even make any sense. And then how long each day are you going to practice? Now, I ask this question because if you don't have time to practice, there's no sense buying a great big keyboard and have it sit in your house for 15 years, right? That doesn't even make any sense. Yet, if all of us look room to room in our houses, you'd find a bunch of odds and ends and weird, cool stuff that at one time it was going to change your life, right? My husband justified it by saying, oh, well, we got to have this because like you make YouTube videos and you need music for videos. I could create the music. You could have original compositions for your YouTube videos. And I bought into that. But let me stop for a second. Let me think through this. He's a hunter, right? So as long as he's hunting and there's no arrival at the end conclusion, he will keep hunting. But once I said yes to that, the hunt stopped, the interest changed, and he went off to hunt something else. So he bought what he wanted, punching Bob. He bought the keyboard, not knocking my husband here, but this was a real learning experience for us on why are we buying the things that we're buying. Because at the time it made sense, right? We're going to switch up our workout. We're going to keep interested in the workout so that we keep working out. We're going to buy music because we can use it in our YouTube videos. But the reality is this. My husband works for a car dealership, and he's gone from about 8 o'clock in the morning until at least 8 o'clock at night, maybe longer. Oh, wait a second. When is he going to practice the piano? And we didn't think that through, right? So I said yes to something that didn't even make sense. And now I have a keyboard in my house that rarely, if ever, gets used. I don't play. I don't have time to play. I wasn't going to take piano lessons. He doesn't play. He doesn't take piano lessons. And so it doesn't get used. So now I'm going to sell it because we don't need it in the house. We're not using it. And there are other ways like stock libraries of already designed music that if I need music for a YouTube video, I can pay a licensing fee and I can license it and boom, nobody had to create it. I didn't have to go spend hours and figure out melodies, right? It's just more conducive to my lifestyle to do it a different way. So back to what do we have that we're not using? And did we ask the right questions surrounding it? All right. Any questions on that so far? I want to be fair to you guys and answer your questions if we get hung up on one of these things. Melanie says it was truly liberating walking into and then out of a store and not buying anything. I think I freaked myself out. Your voice was in my head as to needs versus wants. I was out for a mall exercise. You know what? That deserves a bell. I love this. Walking out of a store, there is no shame in walking out of a store empty-handed because either you did not find what you were looking for or you could not justify the end. Now, I want to go back to the Korg Triton keyboard for a second. This is one of those things that was at such a price. It's about a $1,500 keyboard. At that price, and even though we both agreed on it, and I didn't need it 5 minutes before, I need it 5 minutes now, there's a new rule we're going to put into place because this is kind of an expensive item. This is not a $30 pair of shoes that if it goes south, we're out $30. This is like $1,500. And now in my house, nobody wants to get rid of the keyboard because why? It's a nice keyboard. Perfectly works just fine. And we paid $1,500 for it, right? And this is years ago. But the new question is this. Can I wait 21 days before making that purchase? Because in 21 days, the Korg Triton keyboards with the 88 keys will still be around. They will still exist. They're not going out of business. They're still going to be available for us in 21 days, right? What happens in 21 days is this, and this is also liberating. And so, Melanie, this one's for you. Liberating in the sense that you go through different biorhythmic changes. I'm going to go from having a really good, feeling fantastic, feeling like I can afford this, to maybe in the next 21 days, something happens. Maybe loss of a job, maybe another expense comes up, like your air conditioning unit goes out and it's going to cost you $2,500 to repair it. Things happen in a 21-day window. And as you go through different biorhythmic mood swings, you're going to go from, oh, yeah, I can totally afford this, to maybe I shouldn't be so hasty. And we go through different emotions and different mind changes to where at the end of the 21 days, here's what I found. If at the end of 21 days, I still got to have it, I've probably figured out a way to pay for it so that I don't go into debt. I've probably figured out a way to justify the purchase, meaning I am going to take piano lessons. I found a piano teacher. I figured out how much the piano lessons are going to cost. I've created in my schedule a time on my schedule for those piano lessons. And now I can justify bringing in a piano keyboard into my house because now I have made room for that in my lifestyle, right? It's not a whimsical purchase or an impulse buy. This is something that now I've decided this is going to be a new part of my everyday. And then no matter what happens, every day at 4 p.m. when I've carved out that window for piano practice, no matter what happens, I sit down and I practice for an hour a day if that's what I told myself. Because now that's a part of my new norm. Now here's what happens. Every time we say, yeah, I'm going to take the piano lessons, I'm going to practice, and we don't, what happens is we tell ourselves a lie. And we break down our own integrity with ourselves. Then we stop believing in ourselves because we are lying to ourselves. And this is what happens. A lot of people get in a trap. I'm going to buy that elliptical equipment. I'm going to work out every day. And then they don't. And after a while, when they buy stuff, they feel guilty because they've been lying to themselves and they know they're not going to use it. Somewhere in the back of their mind, they know they're not going to use the item. So they're spending money that they don't have or can't justify on the price. They know they're not really going to use it. Then when they don't use it, then they feel bad and they feel guilty. And it's this weird self-perpetuating cycle that makes people feel bad about the stuff they buy. So I don't want you to feel bad, and I don't want you to not buy things that would make your life better and more fun and all those things. I want you to have nice things, but I want you to have nice things on purpose. And this is a really different stretch from just impulse buying because, oh, I got caught up in fancy advertising. Right? This is buying stuff on purpose. And there's a really, really different rule for that. All right. So the next one that we're going to look at is infomercials. Are you an infomercial victim? I love this one for the fact that I don't know why infomercials, they're so catchy. They keep you up at night. You stay awake when you're super tired and you buy things that you see and you're like, oh my goodness, that's going to save me so much time. That's going to just revolutionize the way I clean or the way I cook or the way I do whatever. And everybody's buying one of these. And if I buy it right now, I get 2 for the price of 1 and I can make it installments and payments. And if I buy it in the next 10 minutes, they're going to give me a little something for free. And it's so catchy and it's so addictive. Okay. And again, it goes back to that. Did I need it 5 minutes ago? And I can't live 5 minutes more without it. Right? If you find yourself in that trap and you're like, is this one of those 5-minute things? Don't buy it. It's probably an impulse buy, right? Ask yourself, can I wait 21 days and buy this again? Because here's the catch. Oh, this ad is only good for the next 7 minutes. No, it's not. They're going to play it again and again and again and again on TV. And it's going to be available and it's going to be available on their website. And nobody made a product that's going out of business in the next 7 minutes. It never happened. Okay. So when we get caught up in all this, when are you watching the infomercials? And I want to tell you this, and here's a trick, because nobody tells you this about infomercials. The infomercials are designed to play on late night TV because people's guard are down. They've been working all day. They are exhausted. They sit down and they're just kind of chilling out in front of the TV. And all of a sudden, solutions hit them. And they're thinking, man, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted from all my work today. This little gadget could just save my life. It could just give me the boost that I need. Okay. And then they spend the money and then what? It's usually a piece of crap or it doesn't work like it's supposed to or whatever. Sometimes it's really good products. But what happens is you bought something when you are tired. And I say tired because there's tired, hungry, angry, and lonely. We call it HALT, HALT. HALT, H stands for hungry, A stands for angry, L stands for lonely, and T stands for tired. HALT. If you find yourself watching an infomercial, halt, halt. Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because anything you buy during that state of mind is not likely to be wise. Trust me on that. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? All right. Diane says, I only buy Kindle books now and I started reading immediately. I only buy physical books if it's a reference book not available online and it's something I will use repeatedly. I love that. Diane, we got to just have you come teach this class. You're just full of fantastic ideas. Thank you. There's my happy bell again. What I want to focus on, and I love the fact that she's not going to buy a book unless she reads it right now. We call that a need to know basis. And I want to back up for just a second because lots of people get in this space, especially in the self-help industry. Okay. People will buy great books. Like, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to buy some books on leadership. Again, when are you going to read these books? At what trigger is this going to be that you pull the book off the shelf and you give it a read? When is that going to happen? And a lot of times people have gobs of books they've never read. So the question is, and now we're going to pivot just a second, and we're going to go into apps and software, because this is also true for business owners. They buy an app and they say, oh, I'm going to use this app. This is so great for my business. When are you going to learn the app? When are you going to use it? When are you going to learn it? Are you going to sit down tonight and you're going to watch all 29 YouTube videos on how to make it work? Are you going to do that tonight? Because if you are, great. Buy the software, install it, or buy the book on Kindle, install it, and then go to work and figure it out, right? But if you're going to buy it, you're going to do it tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next day. Buy it 3 days from now. Don't buy it today, buy it 3 days from now. So I have a keep file, and it's a Google Keep file. It's like a checklist. And I make a list of all those want to have things. Like I remember Camtasia. Camtasia is one of these programs where it's like a video editor and you capture your screen. So like if I was going to do something on my screen and I'm moving my mouse around, you would be able to see that I was moving my mouse around to click here, those tutorial videos. So I wanted that software. But my question was, and I'm getting better now at doing this with myself, do I need it today? Well, no, not exactly. So if I have a message I need to send someone and they got to click somewhere on the screen, what other ways could I do that? And the other ways I could do that is I could take a picture of it like in Canva. I could draw a little arrow, a point here, click here, so that they could see where I want them to click. Okay. Don't need to have that software today. The day will come when I wake up, and it did. I woke up and I said, I've got a lot of those click here, click here, click here, click here tutorials. Today is the day it would save me a whole lot of time if I had that software and if I knew how to use it. So that was the day then that I purchased the software, and I sat down and I watched all 35 YouTube videos on how to make it work and how to do it. And then once you've learned it, you can't unlearn it. You have the software, you know how to use it. And now that's a tool in your toolbox you can use for the rest of your life. So on a need to use or a need to know basis, right? So that is another way of reframing that so that you don't buy things that you never use. Otherwise, you're going to end up with gobs of apps on your phone that you'll never use, that you never figured out how to use. You're going to end up with gobs of software that you bought for your business or books on your Kindle that you never read. So I love that Diane brought that up. Thank you so much. Fantastic topic. Let's go back for a second to all of the stuff that you have on your cupboard. The question is, will you use this daily? You're watching the infomercial. You're like, oh, I got to have that. Will you use it daily? Is this something that you're going to use every day? Is this like a coffee machine where you're going to use it every single day? And if the answer is no, will you use it monthly? Is this like a waffle iron? And then the next question is, do you have another appliance that will do the same thing? The reason I bring this up is because when we got married, I bought a waffle iron. Didn't need it 5 minutes ago. Can't live another 5 minutes without it. But I'm married now, right? I got to make waffles for my husband. So I bought a waffle iron, and I used it probably the first year we were married. Never used it again. When I went to move, I started packing it up to go in the move. And then I was like, wait a second, why am I taking this with me? I never make waffles. My schedule is not conducive because at the time I'm a house cleaner and I'm out the door at the crack of dawn every day before my husband leaves for work. When he gets home at night, it's 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to make him waffles at night. And he works on Saturdays. On Sundays, he sleeps in. And then by the time he gets up, it's lunch. I'm never going to make waffles ever. In this marriage, I'm never going to make waffles again. So are you going to use it? And if the answer is no, don't buy it in the first place. Number two, if you have it, figure out a way to get rid of it and either sell it or give it away so that it's not cluttering up your kitchen space. Because every time you walk in the kitchen and there's all this extra stuff that you're not using, unconsciously it reminds you of, I lied to myself when I said I was going to use this and I was going to change my lifestyle and I was going to be like the perfect housewife that made waffles every morning or whatever. And again, it's like this weird hidden shame and guilt of something you intended to do and never did. So get rid of it. Just give yourself permission to let it go. Release yourself from the, I'm not a great wife because I didn't make waffles. Just let go of those beliefs. They're not helpful. They're not serving anybody. And if you're not going to make waffles, just give yourself permission that I don't make waffles. That's not what we do in this marriage. End of waffle story. And I got rid of the waffle maker and I haven't missed it in the last, 13 years that we've been at this house. Haven't missed it. And he's never once asked for waffles. So, hey, we all move on. Okay. Any questions on that? AJ says, I've been dithering for a while about purchasing a new Kindle Paperwhite in place of the one I bought in 2021 and lost. I keep thinking, what if I find the old one somehow and not sure what to do? I don't know either. But I'm sure that when you are in the position of either buying one or finding the one that you have, that you will have conversations about that. And that's what this is all about, is having those conversations, not just to give ourselves permission to buy, but to give ourselves permission to not buy, right? Oftentimes we're looking for, like my husband, permission to buy something. I'm looking for permission not to buy. Okay. So here's one. This goes back to online fraud. I hope this never happens to you guys. I bought this dress and you'll see that on the left is the dress that I thought I was buying. And when it arrived, what arrived was the dress on the right. Now, it kind of looks the same, but a whole lot doesn't look the same, right? There's a whole lot about that just doesn't look like the same dress at all. Now, the sad part is when the dress arrived, it arrived with no return packaging, no return address, and the neck of the dress was so small, it does not go over a human's head. So never could anyone even try on the dress, as ugly as it was. So I went back to the credit card purchase and I contacted the company. I said, hey, I have a problem here. And they said, oh, well, we're sorry about that, but why don't you just keep it and try to make it work? And I said, well, no, it doesn't work. You can't even put it on over a human's head. And they said, well, if you want, you can send it back at your expense, back to the company. It came from China. And I said, well, that wasn't what was advertised. And now I got to send it back to China at my expense because you sent me something that doesn't reflect the picture. It's not the same material. It's not usable. And now I have to send it back at my expense. And they said, yeah, it would cost too much money if we sent it back. So, just keep it. Well, no, that's a lousy customer service policy, right? The reason I bring it up is because we need to have different questions. And the question could be, what if I bought this dress and it doesn't work out? Is there a plan B? Because oftentimes we buy something because it's on sale or because it looks fantastic. Now, if I go back one screen, that looks like a fantastic dress. Wow, I would love to wear that. I would look fantastic in that dress. I would not look fantastic in the dress that arrived. That would make me look sorry and sad and misshapen and all those things, right? I don't want that dress. I want the one that was in the picture. And what's interesting is I have about the same figure as the person in the picture. I thought I could actually pull that dress off. What is my plan B if this dress doesn't work out? Have I checked the online ratings and reviews for this company? And have I checked their return policy? And the answer was no, I didn't. I got caught up in the hype and there was a little clock that was ticking away. It was like, hurry and buy this in the next few minutes and we'll give you like 20% off. And I was like, oh, 20% off. That's really cool. I should get 20% off. That would be a fabulous dress. And in my head, I was already thinking of places I could go to wear it. I didn't check the online ratings and reviews. I didn't go to see that of all of the ratings and reviews they had, their average was 1 star. I could have saved myself a bunch of money. But instead, I ended up with this really weird looking little dress that I will never wear. Okay. So then the next question is, what is the plan B? Well, the plan B is, am I going to file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau? Am I going to get, all flustered and all this stuff? Or am I just going to get rid of the dress, chalk it up as a good learning experience, and then never do that again? Right? What happens next? You can spend a lot of time and a lot of energy churning your wheels only to find out that you're still wasting time on what's called a sunk cost. Okay. So are you buying things that are a sunk cost? And then one step above that, can you prevent it before it happens? When you see something online, everybody's selling stuff online now. Everybody. When you see stuff online, do you have the discipline to say, wait a second, do I need this? Is there somewhere I'm going to wear it? What happens if it doesn't work out? Have I checked the ratings and return policy? Is this a good use of my money? Did I spend this, 5 minutes ago, I didn't need this, but now I got to have it. Or is this something that's been on the back burner that you've wanted for a while? Now, the reason I bring that up is because there are things that we've wanted for a while. And if this is one of those things, then it's on a keep file. And I say keep, it could be any kind of checklist. But if you have something that, hey, I'm hunting for this item, I've been looking at it, I've been checking all the online prices, I've been looking at eBay, I've been looking at the reviews, I'm waiting for that perfect moment when, like Diane said on the book, she adds the Kindle book when it becomes the important time. Is this the time that I need it right now? I don't need to be buying a special occasion dress right now if I don't have any special occasion to wear it to, right? But if I've got a special occasion coming up in 2 weeks from now and I don't have a dress, that becomes a higher priority because now I need to shop for a dress. If I find the perfect dress online at the right price, it looks like it's going to fit me and it makes all of those, it checks all of those boxes. Sure, go ahead because that then makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense, hold off on the impulse, right? All right. Any questions on that so far? AJ says, great idea, Diane. I love reading on my iPad. Diane says, I can do a lot more things on the iPad than I could do on the Kindle. Yes, these are good points. And I love the fact that you're finding useful ways to use the stuff that you have. All right. This one is about losing interest in a hobby we used to have. Do you have stuff? Did you buy stuff like yarn, like knitting needles, crochet needles, embroidery thread, all those kinds of things? And then for somehow, somewhere along the way, you lost interest. I like to ask this question because I think many people are guilty of this. And it could be something like scrapbooking. It could be collecting stamps. It could be whatever the hobby is. But we bring lots of hobbies into our lives. And then we say, wow, if I'm going to knit a sweater, I should knit one for my sister in blue. I should knit one for my other sister in yellow. I should knit one for my other sister in pink. And we buy the yellow, the blue, and the pink, all the yarns at one time. And we never get around to making the sweaters, right? Also, times change. There might be a time of your life where you did do a lot of knitting, and then maybe your eyesight changed and you're not able to see the stitches as well. Or maybe your schedule changed and now you're burping babies during the time when you once were knitting, right? Life changes. And as it changes, sometimes we give up our hobbies in replacement of something else. If you have replaced that with something else, then the question becomes, are you ever going to revisit this hobby again? And if the answer is no, can you give permission to let go of it? And then make a new rule that if you're not going to be doing the knitting anymore, that you not buy any more yarn. Because if at one point you're like, oh yeah, I might revisit that one day, and you keep buying yarn, what happens? One day you're going to end up with a whole room full of yarn with no rules whatsoever. And we've seen that in a lot of the homes we've gone to declutter. People have stopped doing a hobby they once had, but they keep buying the things. They stopped swimming 20 years ago. Yet every time there's a swimsuit sale, they buy new swimsuits because at one point in their mind, they were physically fit and they were a racer and all these things, right? And so they keep buying the suits and the hats and the goggles and the fins and all the new latest updated equipment, but they're not honoring that by following through with whatever the hobby or the purpose for that was. So the question is, when this week will you pick up that craft or hobby? When are you going to do that this week? And if you're not going to do it this week, because if we walk ourselves through Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, you got the coaching call on Thursday. On Friday, you've got a mastermind meeting. You got a business meeting on Saturday. You've got a community thing on Sunday. If there's not a time this week you're going to pick up the hobby, you're probably not going to pick it up next week either. People tend to repeat things in their lives every week and every month. If there's not a time in your schedule right now, you're probably not going to do it again, right? What would have to change in my life for me to pick up this hobby again? What would have to change? And then you have to be really clear about it, because if you're thinking, well, I'm going to buy all this big yarn because it's on sale, what would have to change? I'd have to change a whole lot of stuff to my evening schedule for me to be able to sit there for an hour and knit sweaters. If that's not going to happen, it's not a sale. All right, moving on. This is so much fun. I just love this. This is just so much fun. Okay, the next one. And this is an interesting one because this is a drone. And the drone now requires a pilot certificate that says you can't, anything over a half a pound, you can't fly your drone without having a pilot certificate, and you can't go inside air traffic, and it has to not fly over people, and it has to fly no more than 400 feet above the ground, and all these weird rules and regulations. So people bought lots of electronics, but they never followed through with them because they didn't have something else that goes along with it. Does that make sense? The reason I bring this up is because lots of us buy technology. We buy the latest iPhone because it has this special camera that's going to do something. And so then we buy it. We spend an extra $300 because it has this feature on it. And then we never learned how to use whatever that feature was. All we use it for is texting and checking Facebook, right? So we're right back where we were before, when we had a lesser quality product, but we spent way more for the fancy bells and whistles and all that stuff. Never learned how to use it. This is really important because people have iPads, they have tablets, they have smartphones, they have gadgets and gizmos and all kinds of stuff. I know that in my house, we bought the GoPro, and the GoPro was a really awesome little tiny camera. And although it did a whole bunch of things, I didn't use it very often because the viewfinder on the back was like really, really small, and I couldn't really see very well what was going on. And so because I couldn't see it very well, it didn't really do what I needed it to do. And so when I went to buy another phone, another camera, I had to stop and ask myself, do I want to buy a big DSLR camera? Do I want to buy another GoPro that like I can use everywhere? But what am I using right now? And the answer was, what I'm using right now is my smartphone. And the reason I'm using my smartphone is because that's how big the screen is, right? That's how big the screen is, and that's how big my viewfinder is. And so if I'm going to take a picture, chances are I would like to see right now with my eyes, did it turn out? And if it didn't turn out, I have it right now with me. I can retake it right now while I'm in the same setting. So I made a decision. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for another camera. And what I ended up buying was another smartphone. Because instead of learning all the bells and whistles of a great big fancy camera, which I've had lots of fancy cameras, I never learned really how to use them. Well, I kind of like point and shoot. You know, I'm a simpleton. But by pointing and shooting, what does that look like for me? It's going to be different for everybody. For a photographer, they're going to want the really nice camera. For me, a smartphone will do just fine. I don't need another GoPro. I need something that's going to fit inside my purse, because if I don't have it with me, I'm not going to use it, right? So it doesn't matter what you buy. If you don't have it with you, if you don't know the rules, in this case, if you don't have the pilot certificate, you're not going to use the equipment. So if it's not useful to you without whatever it is that comes next, it's not a good purchase for you. One of the things that we purchased and never used are like the little GoPros or the DLSR cameras, whatever it is that had more bells and whistles or more than we needed, and we never learned to use it, right? So then the next question becomes, will you get the license this week? And the reason I say this week is because if it's not this week, is it going to be this month? And you can push it out as far as you want. But if you're not going to get it this week and you're not going to get it this month, do you need to buy it right now? Because you can't fly it without the license. You can't fly it without the certificate. And if you can't fly it without the certificate, if you wait 2 months to the time when you're going to get the certificate, why don't you buy the drone, in this case, the drone, why don't you buy this in 2 months from now when maybe there's a later version, or there's a later model, or there's better technology, or there's a better camera that will go along with that in 2 months? If you're not going to do it this week and you're not going to do it this month, don't buy it right now. right? So these are new conversations that we're having with ourselves, not to just talk ourselves out of buying something, but to ask ourselves, really, when am I going to use the drone? And to go back through all those different steps and all those different layers of why do I have this stuff if probably I'm going to buy it. It's going to cost me $1,500. It's going to sit on a shelf for a couple of years. Then I'm going to wish I had the newer model and still never have the certificate that goes along with it, right? So they're interesting questions. And I'm frustrated when we go inside people's homes and we see hundreds of dollars worth of things that people are not using that they bought with the best of intentions, right? Are you buying stuff based on intention? And if not, if you don't have a formula for it, is there a way to either not buy it or get rid of it? All right, this one is never the right occasion. This goes back to buying that dress. Lovely dress, but not the right occasion to wear it to. It is said that every man needs a tux in his closet, right? Oh, you got to have a tux in your closet for all those special occasions. When is that occasion? When is that event coming up? Is that a once a year Christmas party? When are you going to be wearing that tux? Are you going to an awards banquet and you gotta have a tux for that? Does this item fit you right now? And if you're waiting until next Christmas to the time when you need that tux, is this tux that you're buying today on sale? Is that going to fit you next Christmas? Because if you don't have anywhere to wear it today, don't buy it today. Buy it 11 months from now when you may weigh less, may weigh more, you may go for a darker suit instead of a light colored suit, right? Maybe styles will change in the next 10 or 12 months. The challenge we have is lots of people have things that they've been hanging on to for a long time. It might be a brand new tux that's never been worn, and it might still fit. But by the time they get around to that special occasion, the styles have changed, and like no one would be caught dead in a white tux, right? Whatever the thing is. It could be a color of a dress, or it could be a style or something. And then you're like, oh, I bought that. I spent so much money on it. And we don't get rid of it because we spent a lot of money on it. So it's just a thought process that I want for us to change. Melanie makes a really great suggestion here. She says, rent dresses like men and tuxes. This is really a fantastic suggestion. Thank you, Melanie, for bringing that up. There's actually a place called Rent the Runway, and I love it because with the Rent the Runway, you don't own the tux, you don't own the special occasion dresses, and they'll send you two. They'll send you one in your size and one in the size larger, and then it arrives to you and it comes with a return bag. So you wear it to the special event, and it costs significantly less than if you bought it. So you buy this, renttherunway.com. There are several rental places online that do this. Thank you, Melanie, for bringing this up. This is awesome. In fact, here's my bell. Ta-da! Great idea. Great idea. But then what happens is you don't even dry clean it. You take it, you put it back in the envelope, you ship it out the next day, never to be seen or heard of again. And they charge your credit card when they send it to you. And so if you don't send it back, then of course you bought it. They'll charge you for that and the extra one that they sent you. But as long as you send it back, it's only the price that you agreed to. And it's a fraction of the cost. I know we've rented dresses for $20 or $30 instead of spending $1,000 on a dress, and it's the same brand name dress. So there are lots of places like that. In fact, I will leave links in the notes below after this for the replay if you want to check out some of those places and you want to rent those instead of buying them, because then you can always rent the latest style, the latest fashion. And here's what's really cool about what Melanie said. They have handbags, they have jewelry, they have shoes, they have all kinds of stuff that you would then try to accessorize with that are inexpensive all alone by themselves. And so if you were to buy the handbag and the shoes and whatever, instead of $2,000 for this whole outfit, you can rent it for $50. And then at the end of the $50, you wore it, you got all the pictures, you used them on social media, you looked fabulous, everything fit you, it was super high end, high fashion, boom, you didn't even have to pay for the dry cleaning, and you're not storing it. So if you're getting married and you're not set on keeping that wedding dress forever, if it's a bridesmaid event, I mean, you can save so much money along the way. It's a really great solution. All right. I love this. This is so much fun. The next one is a vehicle. Lots of people buy really expensive cars and they never learn all the bells and whistles, and they never learn all of the reasons for having the higher expensive car. And so the question is, what are you using the car for? And then maybe you got a deal on it. Maybe there's a reason to have it. But in most cases, it's just a fancy car, again, keeping up with the Joneses. And then what for? And the reason I say that is because we have really nice cars that are in our garage. And I remember my husband trying to sell me on, during one of these conversations where we had the talk, trying to sell me on a more expensive car. And I said, who are you trying to impress? Because you leave so early in the morning that none of the neighbors see you drive out of the drive. You come home so late at night, it's dark outside. They don't see you come home. You pull your car inside the garage and you park it. You close the door. No one ever sees your car. Nobody knows what you drive. Who are you trying to impress? Now, he works at a fancy car dealership. So when he drives his car in the fancy car dealership, like all the way to work, yeah, it's fancy. But when he parks it on the car dealership lot, it's like every other car that's there. Who are you trying to impress? Not the people you work for or work with, right? There's all these fancy cars out there on the lot. What is the fancy cars for? And so you have to stop and say, why the car with all the bells and whistles? If the point is to get from point A to point B and you're just going to and from your job, do you need the fancy car with all the bells and whistles? And my husband's argument was like, yeah, I feel fantastic in it. Okay, great. But maybe it doesn't need to be upgraded every year or every other year. Maybe this is a car that makes you feel really great and you hang on to it for a few years, right? Again, did I need it 5 minutes ago? Can I live another 5 minutes without it? Can I wait 21 days before I jump on this purchase? So we're trying to stop impulse buying. If I can get one message across to you today is stop with the impulse buying, because we're buying a lot of stuff that we're bringing into our lives that's consuming a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money, and it's stuff that we never use. And if we're not going to use it, or if we don't use the full extent of it, okay, my husband has really nice cars, but like in one of the cars he has, we've got a couple nice cars, but in one of the cars, it's got like a cooler in the console. A cooler! Like for what? What, am I going to go pack my lunch and go sit in my car? Well, no, I'm not. I don't think we've ever used it. And it has like glow in the dark, like ambiance lighting. Like it turns colors on you. Well, we don't sit and meditate in the car or anything. You're driving to and from a place, and then when you get there, you get out and you're done. You know what I mean? My point is that a lot of us fall for things that's just fancy advertising that we don't need and we don't use, right? So that's what this is all about. If you were to buy this item again, would you pay for the extra bells and whistles? That's the question. If you were to buy it all over again, would you pay the full price for all the bells and whistles? Oftentimes the answer is no. I've had nice things over the years, and one of them I do regret selling. It was my treadmill, and the treadmill went up to 12 miles an hour. And all the other treadmills I could find, including the ones at the gym, only went up to 10 miles an hour. It's very rare that I run 12 miles an hour, but if you really get going and you're in race mode, it's great to be able to go up to 12 miles an hour. And it was a really durable treadmill. And also it had a 60-inch, which is 5 feet, plate where you run on. So if you have a really long stride, you're not going to slip off the end of the treadmill. So if I bought it again, and I did sell it because I switched out my recording studio that was at one time my weight room. If I was going to buy it again, would I buy the same one, and would I buy it with all the bells and whistles? And the answer is yes. Okay. So that is something that I sold. I regret having sold it, but I wasn't using it, and that's why I sold it. I'm actually out running on the pavement every day. So there are other ways to still get the same exercise, and I'm glad that I was able to free up the space because I use it. But if you were going to buy it again, would you buy it with all the bells and whistles? And if the answer is yes, good. And if it's not, maybe it's one of those things you don't want to spend money on, right? All right, I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm going to answer some of your questions here. We got lots of questions, and I'm super excited. We're creeping up on quitting time, and I want to respect your time here. A. Rashi says, I loved my big camera, but it was too heavy to carry all day to the theme park. And I asked someone to take a picture of us, and he refused to admit he didn't know how to use it, and the pictures didn't come out. And a smartphone would have done just fine. And that goes back to having it with you. If you don't have it with you, you're not going to use it. And so whether it's a personal protective device, whether it is a camera, whether it's a phone. If you don't have it with you, you're not going to use it. So whatever that is, make sure that you have it with you, and make sure that if you're not going to carry it and you're not going to have it with you, that you don't buy it in the first place. There's no sense buying expensive stuff and then putting it in a drawer that you never use, that never see the light of day. That makes no sense. Rashi says a cooler in the console only works for tiny doggy bags, and if you remember, it's there. I think it was supposed to have like champagne or something in it, but who has champagne in their car, right? Especially if you're the driver, that's not going to happen, right? AJ says I could have used a cooler in the console when I commuted 1,000 miles a week. Retired now. That would have been so nice, right? If you're commuting and if you have a need for it, and if you don't have a need for it, then like I said, we've never used it. Fran says, I'm working on decluttering my garage so the car doesn't have to sit outside. I love that. I love that. And yes, what good is a garage if you're not going to use it, right? So these are fun questions. And Arashi says, smartphone didn't exist when I had the camera. You know what? I know how you mean. I actually carried a digital camera in my purse and then was reluctant to get a smartphone because I already have a digital camera. What on earth do I need a smartphone for, right? And now I can't live without my smartphone. In fact, I actually have two. And that reminds me, looking at my clock, we are out of time. So you guys, this was so much fun. I had just a blast hanging out with you today. We are about to do another show going live at 3:30, not from, I think we are going live on this channel, actually. This one is for realtors and people decluttering their homes to get it ready to put on the market. So if that's you, please join us again. We're going to start up here in another half hour. Those of you that are joining us just for the Clutter Corner hour, we're back again next Thursday, same time, same place. And next week, we've got another really exciting show for you. But during the week, I want you to stop and ask yourself different questions about the reasons why you have some of the stuff you have, and are you going to use it? Because if you don't use it, it's time to lose it. All right. That's it for today. I'm so excited that you guys joined me. Thank you so much. And I will see you same time, same place.